What's going on, guys? This is Miasin, so this is gonna be my top whatever best decks of the format, not top 10, because I'm gonna be talking about like 50 decks or something crazy. But yeah, there's a lot to go over, so let's get right into it as soon as you smash the like and subscribe button. Also, don't skip this video, watch it until the end, don't be a bitch. Anyways, first things first, we have tier elements. So by the way, there's 4 sections: top tier, solid meta option, rogue, and dog water. Tier is not really good. I mean, it even lost Beatrice, so if anything, it got even worse. I'd probably put it at like the very bottom of Rogue, honestly. It's not a really good pick at the moment because Bestials are going to see a lot of play because Ubel is going to be really good, and the Fiendsmith engine is still playable. Labyrinth is one of those solid meta options. It didn't get any worse, but skill drain is at 1, which kind of does hurt you if you're playing the trap heavy build. If you're playing furniture build, I don't know if it's the end of the world. I think this deck is in a semi-okay-ish position, but this deck suffers from Ubel's popularity, because Ubel is a terrible matchup for Labyrinth. Like, Labyrinth pretty much cannot win, just because they really struggle to remove those Ubel monsters from the board. This deck really suffers from not really being able to destroy stuff, especially if they have the field spell active. That's the main issue with Labyrinth, having to deal with field spells, continuous spells that just generate advantage every single turn. Shark is literally dog water until we get the new support from Rage of the Abyss, but this is a good long-term investment. Anything that involves Snake Eye has to be still top tier, even though I think the deck did get significantly worse because of Lacrimosa banned, which means that Fiendsmith Engraver is no longer a one-card combo. So now your Fiendsmith engine doesn't bridge into your Snake Eye engine anymore, so the deck did lose a lot of consistency. And we also lost 4 names, so 2 Snake Eye Ash and 2 Populous. Which does hurt a lot, so now you do have to rely a little bit more on Witch and Wanted. And now there is pretty much no way you can play over 40, because then you're gonna break. So you have to play 40 cards in your Snake Eye deck, and you do have to see your good Snake Eye cards. Maybe you can main deck Lullaby of Obedience, but I wouldn't really do that because it's not like a tier 0 Snake Eye format. Again, Ubel's existence is a huge detriment to like Snake Eye existing. So that's the reason why I think the deck is gonna be seeing a little less play than Ubel until we get Rage of the Abyss with the Azamina engine, and then everything is going to change. Snake Eye is going to be the best deck again. But this tier list is new format, but before Rage of the Abyss, so just keep that in mind. Anyways, Infernoid is a slightly better rogue option than it was before, just because lawn mowing is a thing now, but honestly, it doesn't really change too much. It's just a Saki deck. It's not good enough just because it plays a lot of bricks, and that's pretty much it. Pure Thunder Dragon or Thunder Dragon combo with 2 Colossus, it's cool. You can play Shifter, but the issue is you don't play a lot of good normal summons and like good starters. Like, yeah, sure, you got Aloof Lupine and Batteryman Solar, but realistically, those cards on their own don't really do anything. And Colossus, you can't just... if you're playing this deck as a Protect the Castle deck, you're not going to go far because you're always just 1 Dark Ruler or 1 Droplet away from losing. And those cards didn't exist back when Thunder Dragon was at full power. So this deck now has to, deal with a lot of cards that are now really annoying for this deck. And also SP Little Knight can banish your 1 of Colossus, so you got to summon 2 every single time. I don't know, this deck is... it's not garbage, but it's not that insane. Flunderies, as painful as this may sound to admit, I'm gonna have to put this in solid meta option just because it's a Shifter deck. It has an extremely unlosable matchup against everything that plays the Runic engine. And, Flunderies is Flunderies. It still plays Featherstorm and all those bastard cards, so, yeah, it is what it is. Sword Soul is not super good, but it's never it's never a garbage deck, but it's never, like, an amazing deck. Even when the deck was good, it was just, like, it was fine. I think the deck can obviously still search Protoss, which is cool and all. If you can call Dark, then you're in a great position. So if people are shifting more towards, like, board breakers instead of hand shops, then, yeah, sure, you can kind of FTK people with the deck. But since Baron was banned, playing around Nibiru was a little hard in the deck, so you gotta turbo out, not Xiaofeng. Yeah, is it Xiaofeng? The one that, yeah, I think it is, right? The one that prevents you from using the effects of whichever Yangzing monster was used as a synchro material, which is always gonna be Baxia and, the level 1 Tenny monster. So yeah, no, it's a cute deck, but it's, I don't know. Yeah, you're always playing differently as well, but it definitely doesn't suck. The Drytron, yeah, this is also a rogue option. It loses to Bestials and Shifter and everything. And it also kind of loses to Nib, honestly. No Beatrice does hurt a lot, so I don't know. That's my issue with the deck. It's not that insane. And Ava Unbanned changes absolutely less than nothing. A completely overhyped card. Goblin Biker is dog water until Rage of the Abyss, exactly just like Shark, same thing. This deck also loses to the Molchamis. It doesn't lose to Shifter, though. It's one of those very few combo decks that can't play Shifter itself. Which is cool, and it can also play the Fiendsmith engine, it can make Evils or Lars, or it can naturally make the Caesar, because you have the continuous spell that can adjust the level of your level 3 to level 6. and then you can overlay with badass Goblin Bikers. So yeah, the deck is gonna have a lot of potential once we get the new support from Rage of the Abyss, but at the moment, it's really, really bad. Voiceless Voice is one of the worst solid meta options, so obviously it's still a good deck, but it's one of those worst ones because there are a lot of hands that are just garbage in that deck. Like, when you draw those hands with, like, Ritual Spells, Seravis, like, bad hand shops that just don't do anything, the Chop card, the Continuous Spell that isn't the good one, you're just like, ugh. And also, like, you top deck for a turn, like, Trias or, like, a hand shop when your hand's already dog shit. You're like, why am I even playing this deck? There you go. And also, this deck has a very, very low ceiling level going second. It doesn't have a lot of removal, which is my main issue. So the way it usually wins is by playing a hand shop so that it prevents the opponent from even getting to a board. And sure, you can play upwards of like 16 hand shops in the deck. It is possible. It doesn't necessarily mean that the deck is in a great position against like the field in general, because it's not the kind of deck that can naturally win with just its engine. Your engine alone doesn't do enough, unfortunately. You really have to draw like the best hands of your deck if you're trying to go second, unfortunately. And you also have to draw hand shops to prevent your opponent from making a full board, because this deck is never cracking established boards. Absolutely never. Salamangreat is definitely a decent one. It didn't lose anything from the ban list because it didn't play the Fiendsmith engine. Well, I mean, I guess you could have, but it's not really a necessity. You didn't really need Appaloosa at all. You can just play like fire cards only. And you didn't really need any of the Snake Eye cards either. So yeah, it's that one fire deck that is pretty much completely immune from the ban list, which is pretty nice. This deck also does not lose to Bestials, it doesn't lose to Board Breakers, it doesn't lose to Droplet, Dark Ruler, etc. Because your interruptions are Chop cards and your Princess in the Graveyard, and those kinds of things, so it doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, this deck still loses to Nibiru. Unfortunately, not super hard if you hold your Weasel in your hand and everything. You can extend past Nibiru, but you gotta play like less greedy, and I don't know, I'm just trying to be greedy. I'm just trying to do as many things as possible. So yeah, that's the reason why I think a deck like Salamangreat is not really good for me. Rika, I think, is very good just because it doesn't lose to Board Breakers, it loses to hand shops, but I can imagine a lot of people either playing Bestials as their hand shops of choice with other cards that might not necessarily be good against Rika, or Board Breakers like Dark Ruler and stuff like that, which do less than nothing against Rika, because just like Salamangreat, it diversifies its interruptions a lot by searching Chop cards, having graveyard effects, and this is a very good thing. But again, I am not European, so I have no idea how to play this deck, or play against it, really. I've played against this deck once in my life, and I was lucky enough to draw so many hand shots that my opponent couldn't play the game, because otherwise I would have actually had to read the cards, and I don't know how to read. I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh player, come on. Okay, the Chimera deck is probably one of the best rogue options. I can't really consider it a meta strategy yet. Maybe in the future, but this deck just has so many annoying flaws. It's that kind of deck when you don't draw one of your real starters, like the Coatl or Nightmare Apprentice or Mirror Swords Knight, or even like just Gazelle with a body, you don't play the game. Like, you just do nothing. And you can have like a 5-card hand in your hand and just do nothing at all. So it pisses me off. It's really annoying. And also the deck naturally going second, it's not the greatest. It's locked under fusion only, which is not bad, but it also means that you rely so much on like one extra deck card type. So when you get hit by D-Bear, your deck just basically does nothing. Yeah, sure, you can argue that Voiceless Voice also loses to D-Bear, but Voiceless Voice, it can play more non-engine. It also has like some naturally really good matchups. This also, your monsters have very low attack for the most part, which is so infuriating. Sometimes you gotta summon a Guardian Chimera just to run over something. I had a lot of issues playing that deck personally myself. Magical Musketeer, I also can't consider it like a tier 1 strategy at all, even though it's not bad. Going second, it's a cool deck and all, but Fiendsmith Lacrimosa getting banned definitely hurt, because that's how you would revive back your Magical Musketeers. You would fuse them off with like your Fiendsmith stuff, and then you would keep playing, but now that is no longer a possibility, unfortunately. Really annoying. Unchained, yeah, again, another one of those rogue decks. It's not super competitive because everything that this deck can do, Yubel can also do. So why would you play that deck over Yubel? I don't get it. Vanquished Soul, oh my god, I feel like everything is in the same boat. But yeah, Vanquished Soul is a deck that can't play Shifter, doesn't lose to Shifter. It's not bad, but it's also not great. It reminds me a lot of Sword Soul, as in, this deck is never insane, and it's never complete trash, but sometimes it is trash because you don't draw Ryzen, and then you have no real cards in your hand, and you're like, alright, well, my deck sucks. And so yeah, that's like the main issue that I have with Vanquished Soul. And also Prosperity going to 1. That might hurt a little bit because that's a consistency nerf, but it doesn't change like that much. But yeah, just I feel like a lot of decks also in this list are going to be impacted with Prosperity going to 1, just because they relied on it so much for extra consistency. But again, I mean, it's not that they relied on it, but they really benefited off of that extra consistency. Magic Spectre, dog shit. I mean, I'm not really surprising anyone by putting it here. Kirinta 3 is a joke. Centurion, okay. Centurion is very interesting because it's a good deck overall, but without King Calamity, it is no longer an FTK deck. So it definitely downgraded by 1 full level. So yeah, it's still a good deck. As we can see in the OCG, it's still doing really well. It's like in the top 5 most performing decks out there. But yeah, it just is it great? I mean, it loses sometimes to like 1 hand shot. Maybe the new support from Rage of the Abyss. Is it Rage of the Abyss? I'm pretty sure it is. Might actually change something. The new level 8 synchro is really good. The new main deck monster, whatever. It's not bad. There's definitely potential out there. Okay, Despia is still one of the best decks because Konami did absolutely less than nothing. They didn't ban Gimmick Puppet Nightmare or Albion the Sanctifier Dragon. All they did was unban, well, limit Branded Fusion and then unban Lawn Mowing Next Door, which is idiotic. Like, it doesn't hurt the deck at all, so I really don't understand, like, the purpose behind that, but yeah, it is what it is. Ritual Beast is another one of those top-tier decks. It's the best shifter deck, in my opinion, because this deck, when it shifters you, it kills you at the speed of light, and it's also not bad going second because you can main deck a lot of cards that are both good for you and good against your opponent, such as Book of Eclipse. So the reason why this card is good against you, your opponent, obviously, is because it flips everything face down, but it also flips your own monsters face down. So when you're going first and you're getting hit by Nibiru, you chain Book of Eclipse, you make your monsters go face down, and Nibiru only tributes face-up monsters, so it's not gonna tribute the monsters that you book with Book of Eclipse, but since this deck is a Contact Fuse deck, you can still Contact Fuse using your own face-down monsters. So yeah, it also has a very good matchup against like Karma Cannon and stuff, meaning that Labyrinth might be in a bad position sometimes against the Ritual Beast deck. So yeah, it's definitely a really respectable option for sure, and again, the fact that it can Protoss people, very, very scary, so it's objectively better than Sword Soul by a long shot, really. Rescue Ace is yet again another very good deck, and also a deck that semi-loses to Shifter sometimes, but not all the time, because sometimes you can still get access to Turbulence, because you hard drew like Emergency or Airlifter, and your hand is just kind of nice, but when you have to go through a lot of steps to get to Turbulence, sometimes it can be a little rough. But this deck is overall very consistent. It didn't really lose too much from the ban list. It lost Beatrice, which hurts a little bit, because now your Engraver is no longer a 1-card combo again, and I believe that Hydrant is also no longer a 1-card combo, because you did have to go into your Fiendsmith combo to send, I believe it was Airlifter, Turbulence, and then you would Promethean Princess Revive back. Very similar to Snake Eye, even though this deck didn't play any Snake Eye monster other than Populous. One Populous with Bonfire, so yeah, it's not really affected by that much, but still, the Fiendsmith portion of the deck is definitely way, way worse. Melodious is one of the best rogue decks, but it's not a tier 1 deck just because it does lose very, very hard to board breakers, but it doesn't lose to hand traps. It loses to Shifter, obviously, but even then you can still make a Baguska under Shifter if it's like Shotgun on standby phase. But if you get hit by Shifter on like your Ostinato or even first movement solo, then obviously you're locked. So I mean, well, not on Ostinato, but on first movement solo. So you understand what I'm trying to say. Melodious is maybe not ideal right now, and also it does lose not really a lot to Bestials, but Bestials are still played, and this is a light, well, I mean a light or dark deck, so it still loses to Bestials to some extent. Okay, Orchist, don't play that deck. It's not really good. It has no edge over anything in the game that I can think of. Dragon Link is also really bad. I mean, okay, sure, I might be disrespecting it a little too much because it can still play, you know, Bestials at the end of the day, which is not like super garbage. But the deck has pretty much nothing like impressive going for it, other than like Hieratic Seal, which Tenpai Dragon can just do better. So you might as well play Tenpai if you're trying to play dragons. This deck is just not really good. Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, no, it's just, yeah, it's dog water. It's definitely dog water. Kashtira, this deck is somewhere in the rogue section, maybe here. I don't know. I don't think the exact position really matters for that deck just because nobody really plays that deck anymore. It's not the best shifter deck. I think it's actually one of the worst ones. It's one of the only shifter decks where you can shift your opponent and still lose because you are very reliant on your Kashtira monster sticking on the field and applying pressure, so you can start losing to like triple tactic talents. Whereas with Flunderies, it doesn't matter because what are they going to do? Talents your Empen and then do nothing? That's a nice deck you got there. And also this, it's also not going to do anything because the Protoss is just, it's a win con by itself. Whereas Kashtira, it doesn't really have any win cons. It just summons a bunch of basically summon Scald, and that's it. And then it has, like, they have some effects, but yeah, it's not a super threatening deck. I feel like this deck can lose to a bunch of things. The Yugi deck is ass, obviously. I mean, it's probably the worst deck here. Purely, I don't think it's a solid meta option just because it does have a lot of flaws as well. It doesn't, I mean, it loses maybe a little bit to Droplet, which I think is going to be in everyone's deck. Maybe people are still going to play some of the baby hand shops. Ash is still going to see some play. Ghost Ogre is going to be there. Ghost Ogre sometimes is good against Purely, sometimes it does nothing because sometimes they have I think it's the Happy Memory that protects from card effects. But yeah, it's in the hands of Ding Kang Pham, this is probably the best deck in that section. Gimmick Puppet is not a solid meta option, but it definitely doesn't suck either. I would probably put it here because it can still FTK. It doesn't suck either, but I mean, yeah, like going second, it's gonna be rough. And going first, if you get hit by hand shops, or if you don't draw the field spell, then your FTKs can be a little awkward. So that's the issue with the limitation of Dark Strings. It's not the limitation of Puppet of Strings. That one changed absolutely nothing because the majority of your FTKs only involve one Puppet of Strings anyways. Okay, Blackwing, I have no idea what this is doing here. Memento is a good deck. I mean, it's definitely better than Voiceless Voice. Is it better than Salamangreat? Maybe. It doesn't lose to Nibiru. Yeah, but it's just annoying too because it does lose to Shifter. It loses to the Molchamis a little bit. I mean, Parolia hurts a lot because you have so many summons from the hand. You have the Horse, you've got the Sleepy, you got your Anguish or your Darkblade, and then you might have like the Horned Dragon as well. So that's a bunch of summons already that you're giving if you're trying to full combo. And when you're not trying to full combo, it feels like this deck barely does anything. Yeah, sure, you can still Fiendsmith combo, which is not bad, but I don't know, just, yeah. That's all I have to say. Yeah, I've seen better, but yeah, it's still a good deck. It's definitely one of the best decks that you can play. So I'm talking smack, but it's still a respectable option. Exodia shit. Lunalight is like mega shit. Phantom Knight is meh. Too many bricks. Raid Raptor, no, not its format yet. Yubel is the best deck at the current moment. This deck is insane. Really, really good. It barely got nerfed. I don't understand what Konami was smoking. It makes absolutely zero sense. This deck is almost at full power. Like Lacrimosa banned, sure, but it doesn't matter too much because what this really shuts down is like Beatrice lines. Yeah, and also Beatrice is banned, but you got Aerial Eater anyways, which is like the best substitute for Beatrice anyways, and you got Muckraker to revive back instead of, you know, Promethean Princess, so the same combo that Snake Eye is trying to do. Now it can't do it anymore, but Yubel pretty much can still do it. So your Fiendsmith engine still gets your stuff going in Yubel, whereas that it doesn't for Snake Eye. Keep that in mind. Fire King is like somewhere here. Maybe like below Flunderies, above Labyrinth. Fire King Snake Eye, like a very small Snake Eye package, maybe a bigger Fire King engine. It doesn't lose to Nibiru, which is really cool. And I mean, maybe I'm like exaggerating. Maybe it's like still in the top best decks because you can play a lot of non-engine. I just don't really know if it's like, if it should stay there, but I gotta keep testing. But you know what? I'm gonna be bold and I'm gonna keep it there. Marin says, yeah, okay. I mean, it can play a lot of hand shops, but what does it really do? And also, it still loses to Shifter. But the Rage of the Abyss support, I think it's gonna be the new Trickstar something monster. Trickstar Marin says, yeah, that card's pretty cool. So yeah, when we get it, maybe this deck is gonna improve. But for now, I'm gonna have to keep it there. Sprite. This deck has a very huge issue with its follow-up, but its turn 1 is really good. But without Sprite Elf, I can't really put it like any more above like here or something. Eldritch, this deck is objectively way worse than Labyrinth, so it also has to be maybe there. Hold on a second. It's actually still not too bad. Between Sprite and Kashtira and stuff like that, maybe a little, yeah, maybe also on like that level, I don't know. It also can't really play hand shops. There's no like furniture Eldritch build, but there is like a trap heavy Eldritch that's really good. Or you can play like an Eldritch engine in like White Forest and stuff like that. Runic Stun. This is also an extremely good deck, even though skill drain is at 1. Everything else is intact. The whole Runic engine is insane. White Forest based decks, this is also very interesting. Don't really know where to put this. Probably a little worse than Ritual Beast. You can play a lot of different engines in that deck. You can play the Toy, the Runic, or the Millenniums. I want to say probably Runic is like the most competitive one. And then in second place it would be Toy, just because sometimes you draw like Toy cards without White Forest cards and you're just like, this does nothing. Whereas if you draw Runic cards and no White Forest cards, you're not crying about it. So yeah, that's the reason why maybe Runic, White Forest might be a little better. Lightsworn, yeah, that's very comparable to Tier Elements. It's pretty much on the same league. 10 by Dragon is definitely up here, right after Yubel. I want to say it's definitely better than Snake Eye, for now at least, and then things are going to change. And finally, Ice Bearer is in the rogue section, maybe like close to Chimera. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't even care at this point. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And again, if you have any complaints, I couldn't care less.